Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many times has a woman told you, "I'm not ready for a relationship," and then months later she was suddenly ready, just not with you? How many times have you heard, "Money doesn't matter," only to watch her lose attraction when your momentum slowed? There are 6 phrases women commonly use that sound harmless, even reassuring, but carry a completely different psychological meaning underneath. Men don't get hurt because they love too much. They get hurt because they decode wrong. In this video, I'll show you the 6 lies women tell men, not to attack them, but to expose the emotional logic behind them. And once you see it, you won't be fooled by softness again. I'm not here to attack women. I'm here to translate what most men were never taught to see. As a woman, I understand why these phrases are used. And I also understand why men misread them so easily. If you want to become the kind of man who evaluates patterns instead of clinging to promises, like this video, subscribe and sharpen your perception. Now let's start with the first lie. Number 1, I'm not ready for a relationship. She usually says this after a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. The chemistry was there. The dates felt promising. You thought momentum was building. Then one evening, in that calm, almost apologetic tone, she says, "I'm just not ready for a relationship right now." And you nod. You tell yourself the timing is off. Maybe she's healing. Maybe work is stressful. Maybe she just needs space. So you stay patient. You stay understanding. You stay available. Let me separate something most men blur together. Readiness and desire are not the same thing. Readiness is logistical. Desire is emotional. And real desire does not wait for perfect conditions. When a woman genuinely wants a man, time compresses. Obstacles shrink. Schedules rearrange themselves. She doesn't hesitate. She accelerates. That's how attraction behaves when it's alive. It moves toward, not away. So what does "I'm not ready" usually mean? It means she doesn't feel enough desire for you to override her fears, doubts, or distractions. And instead of saying, "I don't see you as that man," she chooses a softer exit. Not because she's evil, but because she doesn't want to feel like the villain in your story. This is where the emotional engine comes in. Women are highly attuned to social perception. Being seen as cruel, shallow, or heartless creates internal discomfort. So the rejection is wrapped in silk. "I'm not ready" sounds temporary. It sounds fixable. It leaves the door slightly open, just enough so she doesn't have to slam it. And without realizing it, you accept a role. You become the emotional buffer, the safe presence, the man who listens, the man who waits, the man who proves. This is where men trap themselves. You think, "I'll show her. I'll be patient. I'll build trust. I'll prove I'm different." But attraction is not a loyalty program. It doesn't grow because you accumulate points. The more you try to convince someone to choose you, the more you silently confirm you weren't chosen in the first place. And here's the truth most men resist. When a woman wants you, hesitation disappears. When she hesitates, you're optional. Optional men wait. Chosen men don't have to. So what do you do instead? You observe. You don't argue her words. You don't negotiate her timeline. You don't audition for a position that was never open. If she's not ready, you respect it and you step back. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in clarity. Because a man who knows his value does not beg to be selected. He watches behavior, he responds to energy, and he understands that real desire doesn't need convincing. If she's unsure, that's your answer. Number 2, money doesn't matter to me. This one sounds pure, almost noble. She says it gently, maybe even proudly. "I don't care about money. I just want someone real." And if you've ever feared being valued only for your wallet, those words feel like relief. Finally, someone who sees your heart. But listen carefully. When a woman says money doesn't matter, she is not rejecting wealth. She is rejecting obsession. She is rejecting a man who worships status but neglects presence. What she's actually evaluating is something much deeper: competence, direction, stability, momentum. Money, in her psychology, is rarely about luxury. It's about safety. Not gold digger fantasy safety, nervous system safety, the kind that whispers, if life gets chaotic, this man won't collapse. Understand this clearly. Security is ancient. Long before modern dating apps, survival depended on resource control. And even today, that wiring hasn't disappeared. It just evolved. She doesn't need a king, but she does need a man who can steer a ship. And this is where men misunderstand her. You hear, money doesn't matter, and you relax. You think effort isn't urgent. You tell yourself ambition can wait. You assume love alone will compensate for stagnation. But attraction does not thrive in stagnation. She might support you when you're building something, when you're climbing, when you're grinding toward a vision. That phase feels powerful. There's movement. There's growth. There's hope. But if building turns into drifting, if ambition turns into excuses, if years pass and nothing changes, her attraction won't disappear overnight. It will erode. Not because she's materialistic, but because she subconsciously reads stagnation as weakness. She doesn't worship money. She trusts momentum. Momentum signals leadership. It signals resilience. It signals a man who can absorb pressure without folding. And that energy is deeply attractive. The danger isn't being broke. The danger is being directionless. There is a difference between temporary lack and permanent passivity. A woman can stand beside a man who has little, if he's rising. It's the man who has no hunger, no structure, no edge, that slowly becomes invisible to her. So don't confuse simplicity with permission to settle. Don't flex. Don't perform wealth. But also, don't shrink your ambition in the name of being authentic. Develop competence, build skill, strengthen discipline. Become the kind of man who generates options, not excuses. Because when she says money doesn't matter, what she's really saying is this: I need to feel safe with your future. And safety, to a woman, is rarely about numbers. It's about trajectory. Number 3. I usually don't do this, but with you it's different. This line rarely comes randomly. It appears in moments of accelerated intimacy. Maybe things moved fast. Maybe boundaries dissolved quicker than expected. And right before, or right after, she says it. I don't normally do this. But with you, it's different. And your ego lights up. You feel selected, chosen, exceptional. As if you unlocked a secret level no other man could reach. It feeds something primal inside you. The desire to be the one who breaks through walls others couldn't. But slow down. When someone has to verbally announce their standards before breaking them, that's not purity. That's image management. This phrase is rarely about you being extraordinary. It's about her preserving the image of being selective. Women understand how men judge availability. They know how quickly labels form. So, before crossing a line, she installs an alibi. She frames the moment as rare, unique, emotional. She hands you a medal for earning something that may not be nearly as exclusive as it sounds. And here's the uncomfortable part. If a rule collapses within hours, it was never a rule. It was decoration. Principles that truly matter are consistent across circumstances. They don't evaporate because of chemistry. They don't bend because of charm. Real standards hold under pressure. So when she says you're different, ask yourself quietly, different from what? And based on what timeline? This is where men get trapped. You mistake performance for connection. You confuse speed with depth. You interpret access as intimacy. And once your ego gets involved, your judgment goes offline. You start investing emotionally at a rate the reality doesn't justify. You think you opened a private door. but sometimes you just walked through a revolving one. If she breaks rules in hours, those rules were decoration. That doesn't mean she's malicious. It means she understands perception. She knows how to protect her image while giving you the illusion of exclusivity. Your job isn't to accuse, it's to observe. Watch consistency over time. Watch how she behaves when the initial excitement cools. Watch whether her values remain stable when convenience disappears. Ego wants to believe you're the exception. Standards want evidence. Don't let flattery rewrite your discernment. Because real uniqueness doesn't need narration. It proves itself quietly, through repetition, integrity, and time. Number 4. My ex means nothing to me. She says it firmly, almost defensively. He doesn't matter. I'm completely over him. That's in the past. And maybe part of you feels relieved. Clean slate, no competition, no emotional baggage. But then his name keeps surfacing. In comparisons, in complaints, in subtle references woven into random stories. Understand this clearly. Indifference is quiet. It doesn't need reinforcement. It doesn't need repetition. When someone is truly irrelevant, they disappear from conversation naturally. When she repeatedly brings him up, even negatively, that's not detachment. That's unfinished processing. Here's the psychological layer most men ignore. Denial feels empowering. Saying he means nothing creates the illusion of closure. It allows her to feel strong, in control, unaffected. But emotions don't evaporate because they're dismissed. They go underground. And what goes underground doesn't die. It mutates. If she hasn't fully processed the betrayal, the disappointment, the humiliation, or the abandonment, you don't step into a clean relationship. You step into an emotional renovation project. This is where men fall into the hero trap. You see her pain. You want to be different, better, safer. You think, I'll show her not all men are like that. And slowly, without realizing it, you become the emotional repairman. You absorb her triggers. You navigate her distrust. You pay for wounds you didn't create. You're building something new while she's still healing something old. And here's the hidden danger. When you help someone heal, you don't always become the reward. Sometimes you become the bridge. You represent recovery, stability, therapy in human form. But once she feels strong again, once the bleeding stops, the association shifts. You remind her of the weak version of herself, the hurt version, the rebuilding phase. You cannot compete with a ghost that still lives in her nervous system. It's not about whether she loves you. It's about whether her body has fully detached from the past. Because trauma is stored somatically. It influences reactions before logic intervenes. If her ex still triggers emotional intensity, anger, contempt, obsession, that energy is active. And active energy shapes present behavior. So what do? You observe frequency. You observe tone. You observe whether his presence fades over time or lingers as a shadow. You do not volunteer to be someone's rehabilitation center. Compassion is noble. Self-sacrifice without awareness is costly. A woman who has truly let go doesn't need to convince you she has. You'll feel it in the absence of tension. If the ghost is still at the table, you are not alone in that relationship. Number 5. I want a nice guy. Almost every man has heard this, and almost every man has misunderstood it. When she says, I just want a nice guy, you translate it into something simple. Be agreeable, be supportive, don't cause tension. So you soften your edges. You over-accommodate. You swallow disagreements. You prioritize her comfort over your convictions. And slowly, without noticing, you disappear. Because in the male dictionary, nice often means compliant, low friction, easy to manage. In the female emotional system, nice means something very different. Nice does not mean weak. Nice means warm, but solid. Kind, but immovable when necessary. Emotionally available, but not emotionally dependent. Attraction requires polarity. Polarity requires structure, and structure requires backbone. When a man has no firm boundaries, no standards he defends, no calm authority in his voice, desire has nothing to push against. There is no tension, and without tension, passion dissolves. This is where good men sabotage themselves. They pedestal her too early. They overinvest before she's earned depth. They apologize for minor things just to maintain harmony. They think conflict avoidance equals emotional intelligence. But women do not fall in love with fans. They fall in love with men who respect them, without worshipping them. Let me say something that may sting a little. Kindness without strength is invisible. If your niceness comes from fear of rejection, she will feel it. If it comes from lack of options, she will sense it. If it's driven by anxiety instead of confidence, it loses its magnetism. Female tests are not random cruelty. They are calibration. She is subconsciously asking, is this man stable? Can he hold his ground? Does he crumble under emotional pressure? If you adjust your personality every time she shifts her mood, you communicate instability. And instability kills attraction faster than cruelty ever could. A truly nice man, the kind she actually wants, can be gentle and firm in the same breath. He can say no without raising his voice. He can disagree without attacking. He can walk away without drama. He does not beg for approval. He extends invitation. So when she says she wants a nice guy, don't shrink yourself into softness. Be warm, be respectful, be attentive, but keep your spine intact. Because kindness is powerful only when it is backed by strength. Number 6. I'm not like other girls. To a man who's been disappointed, this line feels like oxygen. You've seen the patterns, the drama, the emotional volatility, the games. So when she looks at you and says, I'm not like other girls, it lands like a promise of relief. Finally, an exception. But understand what's happening beneath the surface. This is positioning. It's branding. In a competitive environment, differentiation becomes strategy. And modern dating is nothing if not competitive. When she declares she's different, she is trying to separate herself from an invisible crowd before you've even gathered evidence. Real difference doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself. The moment someone has to verbally elevate themselves above a category, there's usually insecurity underneath. A fear of being ordinary, a fear of blending in, a fear that her actions alone might not prove her uniqueness fast enough. So she accelerates perception. She shapes the narrative before reality unfolds. And here's the deeper pattern tying all 6 of these phrases together. I'm not ready. Money doesn't matter. I don't usually do this. My ex means nothing. I want a nice guy. I'm not like other girls. Different words, same mechanism, image management. Each phrase creates a version of reality that feels softer, purer, safer than the raw truth underneath. And if you take them at face value, you build your expectations on air. Words create illusion. Actions reveal structure. A woman who is truly different won't need to say it. You'll see it in how she behaves when you disappoint her, in how she handles conflict, in how consistent she remains when emotions fluctuate, in how she speaks about people who aren't present. Uniqueness is discipline. Uniqueness is loyalty under pressure. Uniqueness is composure when ego is bruised. And that brings us to the shift you must make. Stop reacting to language. Start evaluating patterns. A wise man becomes an observer, not cold, not cynical, but steady. Like a lighthouse in a storm, not chasing waves, not arguing with the wind, simply standing firm and reading the current. A woman's words test your ego. Her actions test your standards. If you react to her words, your ego leads. If you evaluate her actions, your standards lead. so don't buy the brand before you inspect the product. Step back, slow down, watch. Because once you see the pattern, you can never be manipulated by the packaging again. Now step back and look at what we've uncovered. None of these phrases exist because women wake up planning to deceive you. They exist because people protect themselves, because image matters, because rejection feels heavy, because vulnerability is risky. These lies are rarely weapons, they are shields. But here is the part that matters. If you don't understand the mechanism behind them, you will react instead of lead. You will argue with words instead of evaluating patterns. You will invest based on hope instead of evidence. And that is how men lose years. You don't need to become cynical. You don't need to become cold. You don't need to distrust every sentence that comes out of a woman's mouth. You need to become steady. Stop arguing with her words. Start evaluating her patterns. Watch how she behaves when she's frustrated. Watch how she handles your boundaries. Watch what happens when you pull back instead of leaning in. Watch whether her actions align when the emotions calm down. That is where truth lives. A man who leads his relationships doesn't get hypnotized by softness. He doesn't get triggered by comfort phrases. He doesn't chase clarity when behavior already gave him the answer. He observes. He decides. He moves accordingly. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of these 6 phrases have you heard in your own life? And how did it end? With a lesson or with a loss? Write it in the comments. If this opened your eyes, subscribe. Stay here. Sharpen your awareness. And share this with a man who's still building his future on someone else's carefully packaged words. Remember this. Your standards will protect you more than her promises ever will.